Repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for showing up. Here for the first time? What brings you here?
My name is Aurora, and I'm looking for just something to help build inner peace.
Nice to meet you. My name is Jeff, and I'm looking for something to help build inner peace. Yes. I hope we find it together. Or if you get there first, will you tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Because if we found that, we wouldn't want to keep it a secret,
I'm not one to keep secrets.
Yeah. One of the great Buddhist teachings is the practice of generosity, and so giving time, attention, a heart, a smile. And so if we have this incredible knowledge of how to find inner peace, I definitely want to share it. You ever seen City Slickers?
You know what? I've only seen part of it. So.
Did you see the part where they tell you what it's all about?
Nope.
Because if you, at the end of this hour, unless you leave early, if you hate this completely, just watch City Slickers, and that will also give you your answer.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I know that's a tough one to want to chime in on after, but anyone else want to share why they're here for the first time, or are you just going to keep your hand down? What brings you here?
Refuge.
Refuge from?
The last year.
The last year. Well, I hope you find it. Yeah. Years can be tough, days can be tough, lives can be tough. It's what we get. It's the first thing the Buddha said. Can never forget, the first thing he said, life is filled with what? Suffering. And so once we embrace that and we understand that, it doesn't take away the suffering in and of itself, but it helps us see the suffering for what it is and figure out how to work through it and with it. That's not easy. But the sooner we embrace that our life is going to be filled with suffering, some heavy, deep suffering, and some just little things. So that's our life. That's what we get. So those joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. We'll start with a meditation practice. Benton, Joe, good morning. Yeah, if you're online, you want to say hello, feel free. So with the meditation practice, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. This practice is learning to be quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, if you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third cushion, the stomach forward slightly, allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, if comfortable, relaxing the shoulders. Also hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. If you need to cough, simply cough. You don't need to run all the way outside and cough there because we can hear you there as well. So you can just stay in your seat and cough. Hopefully you're okay. If you're sick, you can go home, but we all cough. So, most important with this practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into silence. I'll say things periodically to wake you up because you've fallen asleep, or remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to present moment. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. letting go of judgments, letting go of expectations from your practice, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always, just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is very often filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, and challenges. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you meet every moment of your life. It's becoming aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. And being mindful of your intentions behind all of your actions. That's all it is. There's no need to complicate Buddhist practice. It's really simple. Awareness of thoughts, words, and actions. That is the very foundation of all of the Buddhist teachings. That's where it starts. So often one wants to skip to all the fancy stuff and the fancy words, the fancy cultures, and the fancy blah, blah, blah. Your thoughts, your words, your actions. That is the essence of this practice. That's where it begins and that's where it ends. Never changes. If you want to know why you're feeling angry and sad and depressed, look at your thoughts and words and actions. If you want to know why you're feeling happy and joyful and excited, look at your thoughts and words and actions. It is our response to things that happen around us that determine the way we feel. Things around us will always continue to challenge us. That's practice. One of my favorite Buddhist teachers, Karma Lekshi Somo, is a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She taught here for years. She retired a couple years ago as a professor. She taught at USD for maybe 25 years, but a world's religions professor. And she would always share the story that anytime challenges would arise, she would just greet them with a smile and say, blessings, blessings, blessings. That challenges were just opportunities for us to look at our own ego, our own pride, our own attachments, expectations, judgments. That's what challenges are. Challenges are just things happening. When we have difficulty with things that are happening, then it's opportunities to look at that. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions. And again, those joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat box somewhere on your screen there. And I'll do my best to respond. So open up to questions.
Very simple. Two things not connected.
Yeah.
Do you ever have weddings or funerals here?
We've had both. Is that it?
That's it.
Those were the two things. I thought that was even one thing. Wow, I got off super easy. Yes. Other questions? Are you planning on getting married and dying at the same time?
I'm already married, so I guess I'll have look forward
The next,
to dying.
okay. Well, you let me know when it happens.
Okay.
I'm finding that I see the Dharma or the teachings wherever I look for it, and not just in Buddha for You, but City Slickers. Haven't seen it in a while, but I was just curious to get your perspective on the Dharma, like how do we take refuge in the Dharma?
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind kind of two things going on there with your question. For those who didn't hear it, just your idea of seeing the Dharma and the teachings everywhere. The first thing is, that's the only place you can see it. It doesn't exist anywhere other than everywhere. So the Dharma, the teachings, are not something that are like a separate part of something. It is everything. It is your entire life. There's no, okay, I've got this, and for those who are maybe brand new to this stuff, there's no like, well, there's my life and then there's Buddhist teachings. Buddhist teachings are like breath. All the Buddha was pointing out is a very deep understanding of the present moment in every single thing that you're doing. So Buddhist teachings, and again, this is for everybody, has nothing to do with being in a Buddhist temple. Buddhist teachings exist in a Catholic church, in a Christian church, in a mosque. Buddhist teachings exist everywhere. And the practice is to be able to see Buddhist teachings in everything. But just because we don't see them in everything doesn't mean they don't exist in everything. It just means we're not seeing it. And by seeing it, all I'm referring to is what I always refer to, which I've already referred to like probably 6 times today. What we think, what we say, and what we do. This is called karma. The word karma literally means action. Karma is not what goes around, comes around. Karma is not getting what you deserve. Karma is literally action. And the Buddha taught that we generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. So in every moment, wherever we are, if we're eating a sandwich, if we're driving, if we're buying a coffee, if we're at church, what are your thoughts? What are your words? What are your actions? Buddhism is not outside of that. So coming back to the question, or really the comment, which is seeing Buddhism in more and more places, you don't even have to look for it. It's there. All you have to do is actually look within yourself. Right? It comes back to which is probably why 99% of the people show up at places like this, including me 20-something years ago, was we're all looking for inner peace. You know what's the most fascinating thing about looking for inner peace? We always think what? We have to go somewhere for it. Right? I mean, I don't know how far did you travel, like weeks to get here today, right? I mean, we all came here, and all of us are going to pick it on you just because you said it, you're in the front row, so you can probably handle it, you know? But that's why most people come, they're looking for inner peace, but we're like, I got to go somewhere to find that inner peace. I have to find Buddhism in everything. No, drop Buddhism altogether. Drop the attachment to Buddhism or being Buddhist or the Buddha himself. That's why in Zen there's this expression of see the Buddha, kill the Buddha. It's just kind of a way of saying that it's not about the Buddha himself. It's not about Buddhism. It's not about Buddhist teachings. It's about you. So instead of looking for Buddhism in everything, look for yourself in everything. When you begin to see yourself in everything, then you're understanding what the Buddha was teaching. That's the practice. And to find that inner peace, you don't have to go anywhere. In Buddhism, we call this bodhicitta, Buddha nature, right? Bodhicitta translates loosely to Buddha nature. And what the Buddha was teaching is that we all already have bodhicitta. We're all already awakened. Like, look at that. You all thought you were going to come here to learn about enlightenment and awakening. And the Buddha said, you're all already there. So congratulations, pat yourself on the back and go back to sleep, right? You're already awakened. But the metaphor is the sun, right? Cloudy day, do you see when the clouds are out? Do you see the sun? When it's full sky, full of clouds. No sun, right? But is the sun still there?
Yeah.
Why do you not see it?
It's obscured by the clouds.
It's obscured by the clouds. So bodhicitta, Buddha nature, to have that bodhicitta, that Buddha nature, that inner peace come out, we have to move the clouds. Now the sky, the clouds part on their own. Us, we got to do a little work for the clouds to part. The clouds in Buddhist teachings are referred to the second noble truth, which is the cause of our suffering: greed, anger, and ignorance. Our greed, our anger, our ignorance, our ego, our pride, our attachments, our desires, all these things that get wrapped up in the reason we suffer. So as these clouds part, then Buddha nature, bodhicitta, inner peace, sunshine can be seen. Again, don't need to go anywhere for that. Just work on the clouds. Yeah. What else?
First one statement, it seems that challenges are just opportunities. A lot of
You got a lot of opportunities, man. Isn't that great? Congratulations. Yeah.
And second, I was at the class on Thursday, the reading, and I was a little confused about something that maybe you can answer. it sounded like she said there's a living Buddha, like it's passed on. Am I confused or?
Well, you are confused, but that has nothing to do with the question.
Yeah.
Right? That's just because I know you and love you.
Yeah.
When you say a living Buddha, expand on that a little bit.
Well, like, is there leadership in Buddhism, or is like I grew up in the Mormon faith, and there's a prophet,
Yeah.
and there's a pillar and the very top.
Yeah.
Is there something related?
The Buddha's dead.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, he died 2,500 years ago. He was born a prince. You've heard the story,
Yeah.
right? 35 years old. They called him the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
He left home. He roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 45 years. In 80, he died. So he is the original teacher and founder of Buddhism, but he's dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't ask him anything. I'd be waiting a long time for a response. And in fact, the most beautiful thing that, you'd have to check with Bonnie specific. Let me come back to that in a minute. But the most beautiful thing I think about the teachings of the Buddha is that I always think about, if you had a really wise friend and they were like on their deathbed, you were kind of listening, like, what are their final words, right? So the Buddha's final words, as he was about to pass at 80 years old, they were worried about, okay, well, at that time, yes, he was the leader. I mean, he was very clear he wasn't a god. He was not a god. He was very clear he was just a human. He was very clear he didn't want people to worship him, right? I mean, he was a prince, kind of, so they called him, his attendants growing up called him my lord. He was a prince. Right? But a prince and a god, well, I guess you have to ask the prince, but princes and gods are two different things, right? I'm sure there are princes out there who think they're gods or goddesses. But the idea was, he said prior to death, when they were afraid of who was going to teach them, he said, I've taught you all I know. Right? I have shared the Dharma for 45 years. In my sarcastic, smart-ass mind, I think he was telling them, dude, if you guys don't get it by now, I don't know what else I can tell you. He literally said, I've taught you for 45 years. You have everything you need. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he says, you have learned everything you need to know. Now you must be diligent and be a light unto yourself. Meaning you must work hard at the practice. Nobody else can end your suffering. You don't need a leader. You don't need anyone to worship. You don't need anyone to praise. You don't need anyone to put up on a pedestal. You are the cause of all of your suffering, and you are the cause of all of your joy. So, now there are temples and monasteries in 2,500 years of Buddhist tradition that have head monks and nuns and abbots and abbesses and leaders of a sangha, of a community, but they're not there to be worshipped or praised in a godlike manner.
Right.
I mean, most things have a boss, or boss is. It's just how things work.
Sure.
So there's that in it. And you have to be very careful, especially in modern Buddhism, Western Buddhism specifically, where you get things like this. And if you have that, kind of head figure who wants you to worship them, I mean, if you started worshiping me, I'd probably punch you.
I appreciate it.
You know what I mean? And that's why, we built this 18 years ago to be a place that's doesn't have your head monk or nun or lama or anything like that, because those places, they're beautiful, but that model for Western people who are learning Buddhism can be very dangerous because people are looking for their savior, because we come out of other religions that you have that. So they come into Buddhism and they think oh, well, there must be some God or someone who's going to save me out there. And I'm like, no, dude, you're on your own. That's what the Buddha said.
That should bring you comfort.
That brings you comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, I mean, it brings me a lot of comfort because it's wow, if I can create my misery, I can also create my joy.
Sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
If I had to rely on someone else for my happiness, that would suck. And I'd spend the rest of my life relying on somebody else for something. Doesn't mean other people can't bring you joy or add joy, So people bring and add joy to our lives, but if we're so codependent on that, we're losing the idea of this practice, which says I can bring myself joy. And then I can share that joy with others, and I can also receive joy. So it's not about blocking people out. And the other part about this is where I was going to say, ask Bonnie about that. The living Buddha, you'll see a lot of references to people say living Buddha. You'll see a lot of references to say that we're all Buddhas, that everyone you see is a Buddha. So you'll see a lot of the way things are written. very differently, and you'd have to really ask the person who wrote that what they mean by that. But the book written by Pema Chodron is one of the best teachers out there. She knows the Buddha lived and died.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah. What else?
Where do you find the balance of giving space and taking space in our world?
Yeah. So the question is, where do you find the balance of giving space and taking space? Difficult question to really. I don't give direct answers anyways. I usually just try to confuse people so they figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
But it definitely is one like that where it's really hard to find a direct answer. Because that balance is going to be different for everybody. In Buddhism, we look at and practice what's called the middle path, which really is about finding balance. And, I think the only one, there's no exact Buddhist definition that says this is how much you give and this is how much you take, whatever it is. I think it's really opportunities to just ask yourself, be aware, okay, places like this also are filled with people who tend to give a lot.
Yeah.
And when we give a lot, what happens?
We have nothing left.
We have nothing left and we burn out, right? So if somebody's asking that question to me that says, okay, they're in a situation where they're either greedy and taking a ton, and those people don't usually show up here immediately and ask that question because they're not even aware of the fact, or they're giving a lot. So if you find yourself in that situation, first is the awareness of, okay, I'm giving and I need to take care of myself, right? So yes, the cause of suffering, greed, the practice is to give, but in an airplane, oxygen mask falls, and what do they tell you to do? Put on yourself, or put on the child first, or put on yourself first, and then the child, right? So you have to take care of yourself. But I can't really tell you what the balance is. If you know you're out of balance, then make an adjustment. When you make that adjustment, if other people are now receiving less from you, they might not like it, but you've got to take care of yourself, right? Often in Buddhism, especially when you hear the teachings of non-self and, people talk about non-attachment and surrendering your egos, if that's even possible. It can very often, for new people, sound as if you deny this existence of yourself, right? Non-self means you're here and you're important. You're just different from how you perceive yourself to be. So don't ignore yourself. Don't stop taking care of yourself. The same love and attention and care that we tend to give to others, we want to give ourselves also. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else? Yeah.
How do you reconcile the idea of not trying to make your outside world comply how you think it should be with having reminders and things like the Buddha statue?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, how do you reconcile, kind of paraphrasing here, but being okay with kind of surrendering this, I don't think you said control, but you're really asking about control. How do you surrender this idea of controlling your outside world to be exactly how you want it, but also finding things like Buddha statues or things that are reminders? How do you kind of reconcile and balance that? Years ago, somebody asked, Venerable Weiguang was a Buddhist monk, great teacher. They said to him that they, in essence, said, "What's up?" A lot of Zen centers, you'll see just a rock on a shrine. You won't see a Buddha statue. You see just the rock. And they asked him. They said, "What's with the rock? Do you need a Buddha statue? Do you need a rock?" And he said, "Well, if you understand that there's absolutely no difference between the rock and a Buddha statue, then you just need a rock. But if you're not there yet, then you need the Buddha statue to remind you that there's no difference between the Buddha statue and the rock." Right? And I found that to be a really beautiful answer because often, with life, we need reminders and things. That's why places like this exist, to remind us to practice, whatever day or night you come to something here or anywhere, if you, any meditation place, Buddhist place, yoga practice, whatever you go to, we go to those things always. It might seem like it's kind of an escape or something to get away from life and go to that, but what we're really doing in many ways is reminding ourselves that what we're doing and where we're going and how we're practicing is important. So reminders I think are critical. Ultimately, again, similar to the rock kind of example, ultimately it'd be nice if we just used our breath as our reminder. But, we're not all there. Yeah, close, I'm sure. So does that make sense? Yeah. I think we just have to be realistic, real honest with ourselves and say, hey, this is where I'm at on my spiritual practice, on my spiritual journey. And not try to, it's not a race. We're not trying to just, after a couple months or a couple years, immediately enter into this enlightened state. We're just trying to suffer less a little bit every day. And however and whatever we can use to do that, I think is beneficial. What else? Yeah.
Asked similar questions.
Sure.
Wondering about the remembering that everything's impermanent, and when I forget that, life constantly reminds me again and again, especially the people I love and the joy that I get from them. What are some thoughts on how you can continue kind of that, or I don't know, for this, deal with the loss and sadness while also keeping connected?
Yeah.
The joy from other people.
Yeah. So the question really, what you're saying is, around impermanence and also embracing loss and death and how to stay joyful. To me, they're two separate things in the sense that very often, and you didn't say this directly, but it almost sounded like this. It almost sounded like what you were saying was that impermanence means that we should just be okay. You didn't say this, so definitely correct me if I'm wrong. That impermanence almost means that we should just be okay when people die. It doesn't mean that. But that's kind of what I heard in your question. Is that okay, I'm reading or learning about impermanence, but then I still hurt when I lose a loved one. And then one might think, well, does that mean I don't understand impermanence because I cry when people I love die? No. You're actually experiencing impermanence. When we lose loved ones, it hurts. If it doesn't hurt, then there's something wrong. That's why I'm saying they're two separate things. Impermanence, I'll talk about in a minute, has nothing to do with caring about loved ones and being sad and hurt when they die. When we lose loved ones, it hurts. When people we know and love are sick, it hurts. When we cry because of that, that means we love. That's life. That's beautiful. That's its own kind of world. Impermanence, to me, just reminds me every moment that all conditioned phenomena is impermanent. And what that means is every person, place, and thing in our life at this moment, every emotional state, every mood, everything we own, all of that, at some point in time, will change and be gone. So for me, I don't look at, as a practitioner, I don't look at impermanence as, okay, well, I lose a loved one and now I'm hurting. Well, what about this impermanence thing? No, I look at impermanence, kind of the question about reminders. To me, impermanence is a trigger. It is a reminder that says, because I know every person, place, and thing in my life is impermanent, I better do everything I freaking can in this moment to love it, appreciate it, and take care of it. Because it will die. They will die. I will die. It will be gone. I already know that to be true. But that doesn't mean when it happens, it's not going to hurt. But if anything, to me, impermanence is a motivator that says, stop wasting your time and life, I'm saying this to all of us, on stupid shit that doesn't matter, on things and stuff and ideas and anger and hatred and resentments, and why leave any room in your precious, precious and permanent life to be angry about something from 30 years ago? Why? Because that takes time away. And we don't know how much time we have. Right? So separate things, I think. Yeah. If we lose loved ones and it didn't hurt, that's when you should really worry. Yeah. It's kind of the similar idea that very often people will read Buddhist stuff and learn about Buddhism and think that that it's this cold, harsh thing that you don't care. No, you care about it. It's actually the opposite. You actually ultimately love and care everyone and everything equally. And that when strangers pass away, there's an old, it's a Dave Matthews song that said something about why can't the newscaster have just a tear in their eye when they talk about people who die? We hear on the news all the time, so-and-so died, so-and-so died, so-and-so died, and there are some people that are just heartbroken and devastated. And some people are just kind of throwing it out there as if it's just, oh, they died today, right? But can we have that endless compassion for all beings the same? To me, that's what Buddhist teachings is trying to help us get to. Yeah. What else? I mean, I know you got one, so go right ahead.
I was curious about the dead Buddha and how the Bodhisattvas then exist. My ignorant understanding of that is that their spirit remains here somehow where the Buddha's left, or
I don't know.
okay.
Yeah.
Next.
Early on in Buddhist practice, I used to be really obsessed with trying to figure out, are Bodhisattvas real? Where are they? When did they live? Who were they? Yeah. And I very quickly gave up that obsession because I realized, again, coming back to kind of triggers and things, reminders, when I see a Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, it's a reminder to cultivate compassion.
Yep.
You see the Manjushri, it's a reminder to cultivate wisdom. You see the Samantabhadra, it's a reminder to cultivate great effort and diligence. So, and in that way, I believe that we're bringing them to life in our practice. That to me, the practice is to cultivate the wisdom of Manjushri, the compassion of Kuan Yin, the diligent effort of Samantabhadra. But, I'm just concerned about them having lived or existing as I am, Donald Duck, having existed or lived.
And if you don't look, you'll see the Dharma in Donald Duck.
I do see the Dharma in Donald Duck. That's why I was referencing.
Yeah.
More Garfield than Donald Duck, but it's all right.
Praying for Zion. It's not Buddhist.
What else? One more before we close. Yeah.
Could you touch on the Eightfold Path?
Yeah. So to touch on the Eightfold Path, so just to kind of summarize where the Eightfold Path fits into this, you have Four Noble Truths, the first thing the Buddha taught. First one he says in life is filled with dukkha. Translates to suffering very often, but it's a real heavy translation of the word dukkha. So discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, just things not feeling right. The Buddha said that our entire lives, every day, we're going to experience this. Some is extreme, some is, silly stuff. The second thing he says is, what's the cause of suffering? The cause is the three poisons: greed, anger, ignorance. So we practice generosity, compassion, wisdom to overcome greed, anger, ignorance. The third one is the ending of suffering. That's nirvana, liberation, or freedom from suffering. And the fourth is the Eightfold Path. And this is where he really goes into detail on how do we get there. What's interesting about the Four Noble Truths is very often we think about the law of cause and effect, right? So just cause, effect, cause, effect. But the Four Noble Truths are actually taught in the opposite way. So the first Noble Truth, the effect, the first Noble Truth of suffering is the effect. The cause is the second Noble Truth, greed, anger, ignorance. The third Noble Truth of ending of suffering is the effect. And the fourth Noble Truth is the cause to end suffering, which is the Eightfold Path. And so the Eightfold Path, it goes into detail around having, you often hear it as right or correct kind of words, but views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, right? Views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. So to touch on each of them briefly, also important to understand that first and foremost, I think, and I always say this, but why do you think most people come to places like this to practice what? Meditation. And where is meditation on the Eightfold Path? Last. Mindfulness and concentration is 7th and 8th. And the Eightfold Path really is meant to go in order, right? So we might think that if we just meditate and concentrate all day long that we're going to be fine, but moral, ethical conduct and behavior is really what the beginning is about. So first one, starting with the correct view. Still my favorite example is, if you're in Poway and you want to go to Mexico and you get on the 15 freeway and you start going north, never getting there, right? So if your view is that I must go north to get to Mexico from Poway, you're never getting to Mexico. So the correct view is critical. It kind of is like, I think of correct view as the, almost like the, on a compass, I don't know what that thing is called on a compass, the pointer, anyone? What's that?
Needle.
Mhm.
Say again, needle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really? How did I not know that? I was thinking I forgot, but maybe I actually never knew that was called the needle. Yeah, so it's like the needle on a compass, right? That it's kind of pointing you in the right direction. Otherwise, you're always going to be lost. So then after correct views, then you look at what are your thoughts, right? The thought, speech, action, 2, 3, 4, in the Eightfold Path, that is your karma, right?
Next.
Thoughts, speech, action. What we think, what we say, what we do. These are the 3 ways we generate karma. So 2, 3, 4 in the Eightfold Path is the generation of our karma. What are our thoughts? Number 2. Are they kind and gentle, or are they harsh and angry? Are they beneficial to self and others, or are they harmful to self and others? So we begin to watch and explore our thoughts, right? Then we have speech. A lot of teachings on right speech and, to refrain from gossip, to refrain from slander, to refrain from, telling falsehoods, lying. Often you'll see kind of very brief expression that says, is it honest? Is it timely? Is it necessary? I mean, could you imagine all of you going one day, and not talk about somebody else? Any of you think you can do that without just shutting up all day long? Right? I mean, I throw this out very often. The noon class, never. Sometimes in the evening class, people feel like they have a chance because they go home for an hour or 2 and go to sleep, right? But imagine not talking about somebody. Think about how many people we talk about all day long. And it doesn't mean you can't. It's not saying that you can't talk about people. Obviously, we live our lives. We interact with people. We're trying to, communicate, work together. So it's not about that talking about somebody is wrong. But the gossip and the slander, that's what we're really looking at. What is the intention behind it? So views, thoughts, speech, and then action. How are we actually moving throughout our day? What do we do? Right? What are our actions, our physical actions that we go throughout our day? Where's the benefit of that? Where's the harm created from that? Right? Then you get into livelihood. Again, very specific teachings on this in what's called the Pali Canon, and it goes into the Vinaya, which is the code of conduct in the Buddhist teachings. Specific things in there, and I'm not an expert on the Vinaya, never was actually, but I'm not a scholar that digs into it that much, but very specific things on, at that time, do not run a gambling house. Do not run a brothel. Do not be a butcher. Do you do either of those 3 things? So far you're safe, right? No brothel, right? No gambling house, and no butcher. So, you're 3 for 3 right there, right? So livelihood, begin to look at what is our career, what is our profession, what do we do all day long with what supports us? How does that impact the world that we're in? So it's exploring that. Effort, the next one, and that's just, as Dogen always said, practice as if your hair is on fire. How much effort do we put into spiritual practice, to our happiness? How hard do we work at that? Do we work as hard at ending suffering as we do at finishing 12 episodes of a Netflix series, which I could kill in 2 to 3 days. So we'll be so diligent in making sure we watch all of them, but then we'll carve out 1 hour a week for our spiritual practice. So where's our effort, right? And not just in spiritual practice, but in everything. You know, in relationships and work and in everything we do, right? And then you have mindfulness and concentration, 7 and 8. And so for me, the way I understand mindfulness and concentration is mindfulness is an awareness. You know, we're aware of the plane that's flying overhead. We're aware of the movement that's around us. We're aware of the sounds. We're mindful of what we eat and what we drink and what we, you know, touch and things like that. We're mindful, aware of all of that. And concentrate, and again, and how we, in the mindfulness of it, it helps us determine how we're responding to the environment around us. And then you have the concentration, and to me, this is really cultivating a sense of single-minded focus to where your mind is just held in one spot. At the same time, you're aware of everything that's going on around you. And you do all that, and you're good. It's just 8 things, dude. Come on, man. It's a short list. So, does that help?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. And all of that is on Google for free. Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. So, we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. A few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, led by different lay people. We have a couple of new things going on. As mentioned, the Thursday night class, we're no longer doing Dharma Bum Basics. We're walking through a book, which is Pema Chodron's book on, in essence, the way of the Bodhisattva, which is a very famous, kind of well-known spiritual teaching and practice. It's a really beautiful text. And so, Bon,
What's the title?
it's called The Way. The original teaching is The Way of the Bodhisattva. And I think the book is titled Bodhisattva Way of Life. Might be a little switch on that. But and so it's a new class on Thursdays, set up in the same kind of circle format, discussion based. I'm reading from it, discussing it. So really trying to figure out how you can all just bring out that Buddha nature within all of you. So that's on Thursdays. Bob has been doing Wednesdays. He'll do one more week this next Wednesday. And then at the end of the year, it always has different stuff going on. So for the rest of the year on Wednesday nights, we'll have kind of a guest speaker program. So we'll have different people coming in on Wednesday night. So just kind of keep your eyes and ears open for that. Otherwise, first Saturday of the month, it's going on downstairs right now. They just finished. So we have a half day of silence. So if you've never done 4 hours of silence, I highly recommend it. It's 25-minute sits that just repeat with a walking meditation, a cleaning meditation. So you have a whole month to gear up to that. But otherwise, Buddha for You is downstairs if you need anything. Thanks for being here.